Hi everyone, Sandman here. Today's video is brought to you by a donation from Mr. Anonymous, and here's what he has to say. Hey Sandman, while I was doing some research on female nature, I came across a topic that's not being talked about much. The Avoiders, aka the Carousel Avoiders. This group is simply women who avoid the carousel in relationships throughout their 20s. It doesn't make sense since women's sexual marketplace value and fertility peaked during that time, so even a below-average chick can land an above-average man. This group of women will usually say that they have only had one boyfriend, or that they didn't date at all in their 20s because she was too busy or focusing on her career. What men need to understand about the avoiders is that they have the same qualities that plague the carousel riders: entitlement, superficial criteria, and unrealistic expectations. The following reasons are why avoiders never actually want to become riders: strong religious backgrounds, strong cultural backgrounds, as well as strong family values and a lack of social skills, also low tolerance for risk, and giving an inaccurate sexual marketplace value of themselves. Even with one or more of these mentioned reasons in place, the avoider's nature is the same. Seek out a high-value male or nothing. Many great options may have actually passed her way in her 20s, but she would rather ignore them, and in some cases overtly, and sit out her sexual prime if she determines in her mind that they are actually of lower value than her. Some of these options may have ended in her friend zone for emergency purposes, in case she becomes aware of her biological clock and didn't snag that evasive high-value male when she hits her 30s. I think we should actually not underestimate the amount of carousel avoiders in our society. Some gynocentric societies may have more riders, while some traditional societies may have more avoiders. I would like to credit most of this information that I found from a user called Jägermeister on the website Going Your Own Way. He stated the following in closing. The avoiders will often tout her near-virginal credentials as someone who didn't sleep around, but her mind is as warped as the rider. Were it not for her timidity and sometimes lower sexual marketplace value, she would have rode the carousel because her instincts are the same, to pursue only high-value males, and to regard other males strictly as utilities. So just a warning out there for you guys. Don't buy the line when a woman claims that she has a clean slate because she's too busy or for hookups or relationships in her 20s. Usually she was actively avoiding decent actual value guys with full intent, until it actually became absolutely necessary to couple with one of them. What do you think, Sandman? I'm pretty sure that you and many of the other MGTOWs encountered these types of avoiders in the past. Have a great day. Well, Mr. Anonymous, I think your observations are right on the money about women in their 20s, but it's worse than you think. I'm meeting women in their 30s and they're still waiting for the perfect man. I know one woman in her late 30s, she's old school religious, and she has a rich father. So that allows her to wait for the perfect man as long as she wants. It doesn't matter that she's starting to put on saddlebags and that her eggs are walking around in her ovaries using a stroller and need diapers really badly, or they'll start crapping all over her fallopian tubes. She doesn't care about her biological clock. It's the ninth inning as she's now entering her late 30s, and she doesn't care about her situation. She brags about how she can still attract young men in their late 20s and early 30s on her Facebook page, and she's always promoting this idea that she's going to church and that she's a good Christian. But if she was a good Christian woman, wouldn't she have found a good man to submit to by now? Just because one of her distant cousins got pregnant at 43, she thinks that she can do the same. Reality doesn't appear to be sinking into her head. The carousel avoiders, as you call them, do everything to paint this image around themselves that they aren't sluts. She says that the other girls around her are bad because of their sexual promiscuity, and that somehow she's better because she's like an antique rookie card in one of those hard-shell cases. Her abstinence is somehow supposed to raise the value of her geriatric ovaries. The thing that really bothers me about women like this is that they're constantly broadcasting their status. They want everyone out there to know that they have the option to ride the carousel, but they're disciplined enough not to take it. This is another form of the female chameleon. They know there are guys out there that abstain from sex and focus instead on their careers, and usually these types of guys have a lot of money and resources. So they're trying to mimic these guys in the hopes that one of them notices her. But the problem with this strategy is she needs to constantly broadcast the good moral values out to the world. If she pretends to be a good, decent, loyal woman, then she expects the man to be this way, even though she's pretending to be one. In many Middle Eastern countries, it's the same thing. They rely on daddy while waiting around for a man to show up and rescue her. She has her father, uncle, and brother to support her until she finds the man that's worthy of her untarnished vagina. Personally, I find it a lot of fun to listen to women squirm while she tries to downplay the number of men that she slept with in her past. Especially like when I hear many fat women say that they've basically been dating a lot when they were in their 20s. I nickname the fat women that ride the cock carousel sperm whales. I think that's a fitting name for such a fine creature. The women that avoid sex in their 20s are like abandoned mines. They put no trespassing signs on the entrance of their tunnel of love, but in reality most of these women are just protecting this illusion of being a carousel avoider. How do you know that they aren't actually having sex with dozens of men, but telling everyone that they aren't? One thing I've learned about women after starting this channel is that women are natural-born liars. Mr. Anonymous, I want you to think for a moment that even these so-called prudish women that avoid boyfriends and are actually waiting for the perfect guy in their life are sleeping with many men. Did you ever think that that's part of their mating strategy, so they look all innocent and pure as possible, so that men think they are naive and try to take advantage of them? Perhaps such women like to act stupid or unintelligent because they might be attracted to a dumb brute. That might be another reason why they promote this idea that they don't want a man unless he's the right one. But just imagine how many right guys such a woman has already been with. If I was a woman and my vagina depreciated with every sexual rendezvous, I would make sure that no one knew about my cock carousel rides while making sure that my social circle, except my girlfriends, knew that I was pure as possible. I would go on vacation and sleep with people there. I would go to bars about an hour or two out of the city and meet those guys there. There are plenty of ways for women to basically appear as if they're not sluts, and many guys seem to fall for it. I think taking a woman's word about how many times she's been pegged before is a really bad idea. Most women I know are talking to 2 or 3 potential suitors at the same time. They have an abundance of bad choices, while the majority of men have a choice between one really bad woman or no woman. Given the average woman's fear of being alone, I'm really surprised that she's constantly putting herself out there, trying to net the big fish. But most women are not very bright and assume that the awesome guys with the many options are going to choose and settle down with them. A while back I was talking to a woman and she told me that she lost her virginity at the age of 23, and she smiled about it like she was really proud of herself. When a woman is in her 20s, it could in theory be possible that she actually doesn't want to sleep with men and avoids them, but it's not very probable. Because in her late teens and early 20s, she's the most fertile and wants to have sex, and lots of it. My experience with women at that age has been that they want lots and lots of sex, and they can't control themselves. Many will simply opt to have one partner in their early 20s. At least that's what I experienced before, and they still want to have lots of sex. It is possible that these avoider women have an extremely low sex drive or they're very asexual. In that case, the only reason they would want to be with a man in the first place is money and resources. Or they could be closet lesbians or questioning their sexuality. If it's easy for them to keep their legs closed and still seek out men to use, then this is a great scenario for a woman. It would be the equivalent of a man wanting sex from women yet at the same time being unable to fall in love with them. Because after all, women want attention from men, but they crave a man's love more than anything else. Because love means that she has him firmly under her spell. And most guys seem to think that if a woman is willingly offering her vagina to him, that means that she loves him. Usually a woman offers her vagina first to get the man to fall in love with her. So if a woman isn't offering her vagina, that usually means that she doesn't want him to emotionally bond with her. So if you look at things from that perspective, then you could say that most traditional women don't want courtship to involve love. They want the importance to be placed on other things instead of just how good that other person makes them feel. Between my big 5-year and 10-year relationships, I briefly dated someone for a few months while I was on the rebound, and she was extremely prudish. She didn't want to be touched, shown affection to, and whenever I tried to touch her down there, she would basically push me away and giggle to herself. She obviously wanted it, but didn't want it at the same time. I think she partially got off on having me want her, but not actually giving herself up, which meant that she was teasing me and causing me frustration. Still to this day, I get the feeling that she was getting off on my very frustration, and that's what was actually turning her on. I think that women that come from more traditional backgrounds are less likely to be raised to believe in love, whereas Western women are encouraged to believe that the pair bond is all about romantic love. So for a woman to pair bond with a man, he has to fall in love, and for him to fall in love with her, she has to spread her beaver trap. Under traditionalism, however, compatibility, similar values, parents getting along with one another, as well as socioeconomic issues take precedence over sexuality and love. Sex and love are luxuries that only women in Western countries can seem to afford. This is possibly another reason why these avoiders exist. Maybe these women's parents helped them to basically value other things and put those things above sex and love. Maybe their mothers told them that sex is used to seal the deal in a traditional culture. But in Western culture, sex appears to be about starting the negotiations process in a relationship. Western women are sluts because if they aren't, then they aren't getting attention from modern Western men. Guys will simply go elsewhere. That avoider in her late 30s that I told you about is extremely hot, and she still gets male attention, and men are dying to be with her, even to be put in her friend zone, even without sex. For her, if she's not a very sexual person, it makes complete sense for her to limit her access to her vagina because she's still basically getting the benefits of male attention without having to put out and run the risk of being labeled a slut. That's the equivalent of a guy getting sex through a friends with benefits arrangement without actually having a relationship with that woman. And the majority of men, if they had that power, would probably exercise it. And the majority of women, if they got love from dozens of different men without actually having to put out, then they'd probably choose to keep their legs closed as well. But most Western men, if the woman refuses to put out, basically abandon her. So being an avoider is truly a luxury that most women in our society cannot afford. Anyways, thanks Mr. Anonymous for your donation as well as your interesting topic. While the carousel avoiders do exist, I think their numbers are small in the West, and most of them come from traditional backgrounds. If they grew up in Western countries, then they will usually be riding the carousel. But if they're daughters of immigrants, then it certainly is possible for them to be avoiders from my own personal experience. But it's hard to believe women when they say anything these days because their word means absolutely nothing. As for everyone else out there, please follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook to get tomorrow's video today. Thanks for taking your daily dose of red pills. And remember, a red pill a day keeps the wannabe virgins away. So enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.